Have you ever looked at the person you've shared a bed with for 10 years and realized you were actually sleeping next to a complete stranger? Tom thought he was untouchable. He thought a burner phone, a deleted call log, and the oldest excuse in the book, working late, were enough to fool his wife. He was wrong. Dead wrong. When he walked through that front door, after a night of passion with another woman expecting a hot breakfast and a gullible wife, he didn't find a welcome home committee. He found an empty house, a cold reality, and a set of papers that would ruin his life. But the divorce was just the first domino. What he didn't know was that his wife had been watching the whole time. The digital clock on the nightstand flickered from 2:59 to 3 a.m. In the suburbs of Chicago, silence usually felt heavy comforting. But inside the master bedroom of the pristine colonial on Oak Street, the silence was screaming. Sarah sat upright in bed, her back pressed against the cold leather of the headboard. She wasn't crying. Tears were for people who were confused, and Sarah was no longer confused. She was a forensic accountant by trade, a woman who made her living finding the missing pennies in million-dollar ledgers. She knew how to spot a discrepancy. And for the last 6 months, her husband Tom had been a walking discrepancy. Tom's side of the bed was perfectly made, the duvet uncreased. He had called at 6:00 p.m. "Hey babe, it's the Peterson account. Old man Peterson is tearing us a new one. I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter with the team to get this proposal fixed before the merger meeting in the morning. Don't wait up." His voice had been smooth. Too smooth. It lacked the jagged edge of stress that usually accompanied a crisis at the firm. Sarah had said, "Okay, honey. Good luck. I love you." She had said it because she needed him to feel safe. She needed him to feel comfortable. A comfortable man gets sloppy. A scared man covers his tracks. At 3:05 a.m., Sarah picked up her iPad. She didn't open the Find My app. Tom was smart enough to leave his primary iPhone at the office. He'd done it before. The GPS would show him sitting faithfully at his desk at 400 North LaSalle. Instead, Sarah opened the app for the blackened, unobtrusive dashboard camera inside Tom's Audi Q7. Tom loved that car. He loved it more than he loved most people. When he bought it, he bragged about the always-on 4K cloud security system. "If anyone even scratches the bumper while I'm parked," he had told her, "I'll have their face in high definition." He had forgotten that the account was linked to the family email. Sarah watched the live feed. The car wasn't parked in the underground garage of his office building. The GPS coordinates stamped in the bottom right corner of the video feed read the Palmer House Hilton. The car was parked in the valet lot. Sarah zoomed in on the timestamp history. The engine had turned off at 7:15 p.m. He hadn't been at the office. He hadn't been with the team. Sarah finally let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since Christmas. The confirmation didn't hurt, that was the strange part. The pain had already happened months ago when she first suspected. Now there was only a cold, metallic resolve. It felt like steel hardening in her stomach. She got out of bed, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. She walked to the closet and pulled out a large, heavy suitcase. It was the Samsonite Tom had bought for their anniversary trip to Italy, the trip they never took because work was too crazy. She didn't pack her clothes. She didn't pack her toiletries. She walked to Tom's closet. She began to pack his suits, his Italian leather shoes, his collection of vintage watches. She packed them with the precision of a surgeon. She wasn't throwing them on the lawn that was for amateurs. That was for women who wanted a scene. Sarah didn't want a scene. She wanted an erasure. As she folded his favorite navy blazer, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. a text from her sister Diane. Diane was a divorce attorney in the city, known by her colleagues as the Barracuda. Diane. The PI just sent the photos. Do you want to see them now or wait until morning? Sarah typed back immediately. Sarah, send them. 3 images loaded. They were grainy, taken with a long-range lens, but the subjects were unmistakable. Image 1. Tom laughing at a table in the hotel bar. His hand was resting on the forearm of a woman with blonde hair cascading down her back. Image 2. The woman turning her profile to the camera. Sarah froze. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a random secretary or a girl he met at the gym. It was Jessica. Jessica who lived 3 houses down. Jessica who had come over for wine nights every Thursday for 2 years. Jessica who had cried on Sarah's shoulder when her own husband left her, claiming she was too heartbroken to ever trust again. Sarah stared at the screen until the pixels seemed to burn into her retinas. The betrayal wasn't just marital anymore. It was domestic. It was intimate. Tom hadn't just cheated. He had brought the enemy into their sanctuary. Sarah looked at the half-packed suitcase. She realized she was thinking too small. Packing his clothes wasn't enough. She needed to dismantle his entire life. By 5:30 a.m., the house looked disturbingly normal, but the infrastructure of Tom's life had been gutted. Sarah sat at the kitchen island, her laptop open, a pot of black coffee steaming next to her. She logged into their joint bank accounts. Tom was the big earner, a fact he liked to remind her of whenever she wanted to renovate the kitchen or take a vacation. I make the money, Sarah. I should get a say in how we spend it. But Sarah managed the money. She knew the passwords, the security questions, the PIN codes. She moved quickly. She transferred her half of the savings down to the cent into a new account she had opened at a different bank 3 days ago. Then she looked at the joint investment portfolio. Legally, she couldn't take everything without a judge's order, and she knew Diane would advise against looking malicious in court. But she could make things difficult. She froze the credit cards. She reported the joint American Express, the one Tom used for everything, as lost, stolen. It wouldn't stop him forever, but it would certainly embarrass him when he tried to pay the bill for his hotel room this morning. Then came the piece de résistance. Sarah logged into his iCloud. He had changed the password recently, but Tom was a creature of habit. He used variations of his high school football jersey number and the street he grew up on. It took her 3 tries. Access granted. She went to deleted photos. There they were. Selfies in bed. Photos of expensive dinners. A screenshot of a Zillow listing for a condo downtown. A condo he had told Sarah he was looking at as an investment property for their retirement. He wasn't buying it for their retirement. He was buying it for Jessica. Sarah downloaded everything. She organized the files into a folder labeled The Exit Strategy and emailed it to Diane. At 6:30 a.m., the front door lock clicked. Sarah didn't flinch. She took a sip of coffee. Tom walked in. He looked exhausted, but in that performative way people do when they want you to think they've been working hard. His tie was loosened, his top button undone, his hair slightly messy. He smelled like hotel soap and mint gum, the universal scent of a cheetah covering his tracks. "Oh, God!" Tom groaned, dropping his briefcase on the floor. "Babe, you're up." What a nightmare. Peterson kept us there all night. I think I slept for maybe 20 minutes on the conference room floor. He walked over to kiss her. Sarah didn't pull away. She let him kiss her cheek. It took every ounce of her willpower not to vomit. "You poor thing," Sarah said, her voice monotone. "Did you get the proposal finished?" "Yeah." Tom sighed, heading for the fridge. "We got it done. Saved the company millions as usual. Is there any coffee left?" "Fresh pot," Sarah said. Tom poured a mug and leaned against the counter, smiling that charming, boyish smile that had won her over 12 years ago. "I'm going to hop in the shower, wash the office off me. Then maybe, I don't know, maybe we can go out for brunch, just the two of us. I feel like I haven't seen you in days." The audacity was breathtaking. He had just spent the night in a hotel with their neighbor, and now he wanted to play the doting husband. "That sounds lovely, Tom," Sarah said, typing on her laptop. "But you should probably hurry. You have a busy day." Tom paused, mug halfway to his mouth. "Busy day. It's Saturday. I cleared my schedule." "Did you—" Sarah didn't look up. "I thought you might want to be here when the movers arrive." Tom frowned. The room temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. "Movers? What movers?" Sarah finally looked up. Her eyes were dead. There was no anger, no sadness, just a terrifying emptiness. "The movers for your things, Tom. I didn't want you to have to pack them yourself after working so hard all night." Tom laughed, a nervous staccato sound. "Sarah, what are you talking about? Is this a joke?" Sarah closed her laptop with a sharp snap. "No joke, Tom. The locks are being changed at noon. Your sister agreed to let you crash on her couch for a few days. I already called her. I packed the essentials. The rest will be in storage. Here is the key to the unit." She slid a small brass key across the marble countertop. It stopped right next to his hand. Tom stared at the key. The color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. "Sarah?" He stammered, his voice rising. "You're not making sense. I was at work. You can call Mark. He was right there with me." "Mark?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Mark who covered for you in Vegas last year. Mark who hates his own wife." "No, I don't think I'll call Mark." She stood up and walked over to the hallway table where a thick manila envelope lay waiting. She picked it up and tossed it onto the kitchen island. It landed with a heavy thud. "I'm not doing this argument, Tom. I'm not doing the gaslighting. I'm not doing the it's not what it looks like. I know about the Palmer house. I know about the room service at 11:00 p.m. I know about the investment condo." She paused, watching him crumble. "And Tom, tell Jessica that she left her earring in your passenger seat last week. I put it in the envelope. You can give it back to her when you move in." Tom looked like he had been shot. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The charm was gone. The sales executive persona had evaporated. He was just a naked liar standing in a kitchen he no longer owned. You monitored my car," he whispered, horror dawning on him. "I monitored our assets," Sarah corrected. "Now get out!" "You can't just kick me out," Tom shouted, sudden anger replacing the shock. He slammed his hand on the counter. "This is my house. I pay the mortgage. I pay for everything. You're nothing without me, Sarah. You're just a glorified accountant." Sarah smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, Tom," she said softly, "I'm a forensic accountant, and while looking through our joint finances to separate them, I found something very interesting about that Peterson account you were supposedly working on last night." Tom went still. The anger vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. "I found the offshore transfer, Tom," she whispered. "The one to the Cayman Islands shell company. The one you didn't declare to the IRS, or to your partners at the firm." She checked her watch. It's 7:00 a.m. I haven't clicked send on the email to the IRS whistleblower tip line yet. If you leave right now, and I mean right now, I might forget to do it." Tom looked at the laptop. He looked at Sarah. He looked at the key to the storage unit. He realized then that he wasn't dealing with a heartbroken wife. He was dealing with an executioner. Without a word, Tom grabbed the envelope and the key. He didn't even pick up his briefcase. He turned and walked out the front door. Sarah listened to the Audi start up in the driveway. She listened to it peel away the tires, screeching against the asphalt. She stood in the silence of the kitchen. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. "Diane." "I'm here," her sister answered. "Did he leave?" "He's gone," Sarah said. "Did you tell him about the IRS tip?" "I did." "Did you tell him that you already sent it 10 minutes ago?" Sarah took a sip of her coffee. "No," she said. "I'm saving that for the twist." Tom drove the Audi to the nearest Starbucks parking lot, his hands shaking so hard he could barely grip the steering wheel. He needed a plan. He needed a shower. But mostly, he needed an ally. He dialed Jessica. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "Tom." Her voice was groggy, laced with a hint of irritation. "It's 7:15. We just left each other 3 hours ago. You know I need my beauty sleep." "She knows," Tom blurted out. "Sarah knows everything. About us. About the hotel. She kicked me out." There was a pause on the other end. A long, calculating silence. "What do you mean, kicked you out?" Jessica asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "Like for the weekend?" "No, Jess. For good. She packed my bags. She took the house keys. She froze the joint accounts. So, she froze the money." Jessica's tone shifted from sleepy to alert instantly. "Yeah, but don't worry about that," Tom said quickly, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I'm the rainmaker. I'll get a lawyer on Monday and unfreeze everything. It's just a temporary setback. Look, I'm coming over. I need a place to crash until I get my condo situation sorted." "Coming over here?" Jessica hesitated. "Tom, the neighbors will see. My ex-husband drops the kids off at 10:00 a.m. It's not a good time." Tom felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This was the woman who just hours ago had whispered in his ear that they were soulmates, and that she wished they could run away together. "Jess, I have nowhere else to go. My sister lives in the city an hour away. I just need a shower and a bed." "Fine," she sighed. "Park down the street. Come in through the back gate. And Tom, don't bring all your luggage. It looks desperate." Tom hung up. He looked at the dashboard. The check engine light flickered on. The car was barely 2 years old. He realized with a sinking feeling that Sarah hadn't just frozen the bank accounts. She had likely cancelled the premium maintenance subscription on the Audi too. She was thorough. He arrived at Jessica's house 3 doors down from his own. He parked 2 blocks away as instructed, and walked, dragging his heavy suitcase, feeling like a thief in his own neighborhood. When Jessica opened the back door, she didn't hug him. She was already dressed in yoga pants and a tight tank top, looking perfect. She scanned the yard to make sure no one was watching. "Put the bag in the garage," she whispered. They sat in her kitchen. It was a mirror image of Sarah's kitchen. Same builder, same layout, but colder. "So," Jessica said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "She knows about us. Does she know about the other thing?" "The Cayman account." Tom rubbed his temples. "She mentioned it. She said she'd tip off the IRS. But she won't do it. Sarah is risk-averse. If she reports me, the assets get frozen for years. She wants her alimony. She won't burn the money pile she expects to live off of. Are you sure? Jessica asked, eyeing him critically. Because you said she was a mouse. Mice don't usually kick their husbands out at dawn. She's bluffing, Tom insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. I'm going to the office to check the files. I need to make sure the paper trail is clean just in case. Can I borrow your car, Sarah? She might have tracked the Audi. My car is in the shop, Jessica lied smoothly. Tom knew it wasn't. He had seen her white Mercedes in the driveway. Just use Uber. Tom stared at her. He was beginning to see cracks in the porcelain doll. She wasn't offering comfort. She was doing risk assessment. Fine, Tom said. I'll Uber. As he waited for the ride, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from the neighborhood Facebook group, Oak Street Community. He rarely checked it. Sarah usually handled the social obligations, but the preview text made his blood freeze. Sarah Jenkins. Dear neighbors, just a heads up that there will be a truck coming by later to pick up some furniture. Also, for those asking, yes, Tom will be staying with Jessica close by for the foreseeable future. We appreciate everyone's privacy during this transition. It was a master stroke. It wasn't angry. It wasn't hysterical. It was informative. It politely framed the narrative Tom is with Jessica. Jessica's phone buzzed at the same time. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. She posted it, Jessica hissed. She posted it to the group. Carol from the HOA just commented, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Tom, you have to leave. What? You have to leave. Jessica's voice rose to a screech. I can't be the other woman in the suburbs. I have a reputation. I'm the victim of a bad marriage. Remember, if people think I'm a home wrecker, I'm socially dead here. You are a home wrecker, Jess, Tom shouted, snapping. We've been sleeping together for 6 months. Get out, she pointed to the door. Go to a hotel. Go to your sister's. Just get out of my kitchen. Tom stood there, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Sarah hadn't just kicked him out of his house. She had played a card that nuked his safe harbor before he could even unpack his toothbrush. He grabbed his suitcase. You're unbelievable. And you, Jessica sneered, are broke. Monday morning arrived with the grim inevitability of a funeral procession. Tom had spent the weekend on his sister's lumpy sofa in a cramped apartment in Wicker Park. His sister Brenda had spent the entire time lecturing him about what an idiot he was, while her cats used his Italian leather suitcase as a scratching post. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's dead, calm eyes as she slid that key across the counter. He dressed in his wrinkled suit. He hadn't had time to get it pressed, and took the train into the city. He couldn't risk driving the Audi. The registration was in both their names, and he was paranoid she'd report it stolen. He arrived at the firm Sterling and Partners at 8:30 a.m. He needed to get to his computer. He needed to move the Cayman funds before the IRS froze them. He needed to delete the emails. He walked into the lobby, flashing his smile at the security guard, Ralph. Morning, Ralph, Tom said, swiping his badge at the turnstile. Beep, 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 red light. Tom frowned. He swiped again. Beep, beep, beep. Red light. Machine must be a glitching, Tom muttered, looking at Ralph. Ralph didn't smile back. He looked down at his clipboard, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Jenkins, I'm going to have to ask you to wait here. Mr. Sterling wants to see you. I can't let you up to the floor. What? Tom laughed, nervously. Ralph, I'm a senior VP. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Just buzz me in. I can't do that, sir. Ralph's voice was firm. Please step away from the turnstiles. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. It wasn't Mr. Sterling. It was the head of HR, a woman named Karen, who Tom had always dismissed as a bureaucratic nuisance, and two large men in cheap suits. "Tom," Karen said, her face unreadable, "please come with us to the conference room on the ground floor." "This is ridiculous," Tom sputtered, but he followed them. The two men flanked him like he was a flight risk. Inside the conference room, Arthur Sterling, the managing partner, was sitting at the head of the table. Next to him sat a man Tom didn't recognize, wearing a windbreaker with a badge clipped to his belt. "Arthur." Tom started. "My badge isn't working, and Karen is treating me like a criminal." "Sit down, Tom," Arthur said. His voice was cold steel. Tom sat. "This is Special Agent Miller from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division," Arthur said, gesturing to the man in the windbreaker. "And I believe you know why he's here." Tom's heart hammered against his ribs. She did it. She actually did it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tom lied. "If this is about the Peterson account, I can explain. It was a creative accounting structure to minimize tax liability for the client." "Stop," Agent Miller said. He slid a folder across the table. Tom looked down. It wasn't just the Peterson account. It was everything. Copies of wire transfers, shell company registrations in the Cayman Islands with Tom's signature, emails from his personal account discussing how to hide the skim from the firm, and right on top, a time-stamped report generated by a forensic accountant. "Your wife," Arthur said, his voice dripping with disgust, "sent over a very comprehensive packet on Saturday morning. It seems you've been diverting client refunds into your own offshore entity for 3 years. The firm is facing a massive audit because of you." "She's lying," Tom shouted, standing up. "She's crazy. She's doing this because I left her. It's a vindictive divorce. The digital footprint doesn't lie, Mr. Jenkins," Agent Miller said calmly. "We've already verified the IP addresses. You made the transfers from this building. And interestingly, one large transfer was made from the Wi-Fi at the Palmer House Hilton on Friday night. At 2:00 a.m. Tom froze. That was when he had stepped out of bed while Jessica was sleeping to check the balance. "You're fired, Tom," Arthur said. "Obviously. We are pressing charges for embezzlement. The agency is seizing your assets pending the investigation. Your 401k, your bonuses, your stock options, they're all frozen." "You can't do that," Tom screamed. "I earned that money." "You stole it," Arthur corrected. "Karen will escort you out. Do not go to your desk. Your personal effects will be mailed to you." "Mailed to where?" Karen asked, pen poised over a form. "We have the Oak Street address on file." "No," Tom said quickly. I can't go there." "Then give us an address, Tom," Arthur said. Tom realized he didn't have one. "Send it to my sisters," he whispered, giving the address. The walk of shame out of the building was the longest 2 minutes of his life. The lobby was full of junior associates people he had bullied and belittled for years. They watched in silence as he was escorted out by security. He stood on the sidewalk of North LaSalle Street. It was 9:45 a.m. He had no job. He had no car. He had no access to his money. He was facing federal prison time. His phone buzzed. He expected it to be a lawyer. Or maybe Jessica apologizing. It was a notification from his bank app. Alert insufficient funds. He checked the balance of his personal checking account, the only one Sarah hadn't been able to touch initially. It was empty. He scrolled through the transaction history. Pending $15,000, retainer Wolf and Associates Family Law. Sarah hadn't taken the money. She had used his own password, which he hadn't changed in his panic to pay the retainer for her divorce lawyer using his account. She was using his money to destroy him. Tom looked up at the skyscraper he had just been kicked out of. He felt a laugh bubbling up in his throat, a hysterical, manic sound. He had thought he was the main character. He had thought he was the player. He realized now he was just the pinata. And Sarah had just picked up the bat. 3 weeks later, the mediation room at Wolf & Associates smelled of lemon polish and expensive intimidation. Tom sat on one side of the mahogany table, wearing a suit that was visibly too large for him. He had lost 15 pounds. His skin was sallow. His eyes rimmed with dark circles that no amount of sleep could fix, mostly because he wasn't sleeping. Next to him sat Gary, a lawyer he had found on a billboard near the highway, who advertised DUI and divorce easy payments. Gary smelled like stale cigarette smoke and seemed more interested in the free pastries on the sidebar than his client's defense. Across the table sat Sarah. She looked radiant. She wore a cream-colored blouse and a sharp blazer. Her hair was cut in a new, shorter style that framed her face. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a CEO. Next to her was Marcus Wolf, the most feared divorce attorney in Chicago, a man whose smile was rumored to lower room temperatures. "Let's begin," Wolf said, opening a leather binder. "My client is filing for full dissolution of the marriage on the grounds of adultery, financial abandonment, and criminal fraud." "Now hold on," Gary mumbled, wiping a crumb from his tie. "The criminal charges are alleged. Tom hasn't been convicted yet. We're here to split the assets. 50-50. Illinois is an equitable distribution state." Sarah didn't speak. She just slid a document across the table. "This, Ahu," Wolf said, tapping the paper, "is a forensic audit of the marital assets, or rather what's left of them." Tom looked at the sheet. It was a list of expenditures labeled the Affair Ledger. Dinners at Le Colonial, hotel suites, jewelry from Tiffany's, a lease on a Mercedes C-Class registered to one Jessica Miller. Total expenditure over 12 months, $68,000. Wolf leaned forward. "Under the law, this is dissipation of marital assets. You spent family money on your mistress. We are deducting this entire amount from your share of the house equity." That's everything I have," Tom croaked. "If you take that out, I have nothing. We're not done." Wolf continued, flipping a page. "Since the federal government has frozen your personal accounts, and the IRS is auditing the joint returns, Sarah is claiming innocent spouse relief. She has proven she had no knowledge of your embezzlement. This means the tax liability, which we estimate to be around $200,000 in penalties, is yours alone." Gary blinked. "But the house on Oak Street. It has $400,000 in equity." "Correct," Wolf smiled. "And we are offering Tom a deal. He signs over his full interest in the house to Sarah today. In exchange, Sarah will not introduce Exhibit B into the criminal trial." Tom looked up, sweat beading on his forehead. "What is Exhibit B?" Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "The recordings, Tom." Tom's blood ran cold. "What recordings?" "The dashcam in the Audi records audio, even when the car is parked if the sensor is triggered," Sarah explained. "And you and Jessica spent a lot of time sitting in that car talking." She pulled a USB drive from her purse and set it on the table. "I have hours of you two talking, but specifically, The conversation from January 14th. The one where you told Jessica exactly how you altered the PDFs for the Peterson account. The one where you admitted you knew it was illegal, but the idiots at the firm would never catch it. Tom felt the room spin. That recording wasn't just evidence of cheating. It was a confession to a federal crime. It proved intent. If the prosecutor heard that there would be no plea deal, he would go away for 10 years minimum. "If I sign the house over," Tom whispered, "you destroy the drive." "I won't give it to the prosecutor," Sarah corrected. "I keep it, as insurance. You sign the papers, you leave the state, and you never contact me again. If you do, the drive goes to Agent Miller." "Gary." Tom turned to his lawyer, pleading. "Can she do this? Isn't this blackmail?" Gary looked at the USB drive, then at the terrified look on Tom's face. He closed his file. "Tom," Gary said softly, "if that recording exists, you're cooked. Sign the house over. Take the deal." Tom looked at Sarah. He looked for a trace of the woman who used to make him pancakes on Sundays, the woman who had nursed him through the flu. She was gone. With a shaking hand, Tom picked up the pen. He signed away the house. He signed away the furniture. He signed away his life. "One more thing," Sarah said as he finished. "I want the dog." "Buster." Tom's eyes filled with tears. "But he's my dog. I raised him." "Buster requires expensive vet bills and premium food," Sarah said coldly. "You're unemployed and facing indictment. You can't afford him. I'm taking him." Tom dropped the pen. He put his head in his hands and wept. 4 months later. The Chicago winter had set in early, turning the city into a gray, slushy purgatory. Tom sat on the edge of a stained mattress in a basement studio apartment in Gary, Indiana. It was all he could afford. His bank account balance was $42.18. The rainmaker was gone. In his place was a pariah. The criminal case was dragging on. His lawyer, a public defender now since he couldn't afford Gary anymore, was negotiating a plea deal. But it didn't look good. The firm Sterling and Partners was out for blood. They wanted to make an example of him. But the waiting was the hardest part. He was out on bail, but he was trapped. His passport was surrendered. He had an ankle monitor that chafed his leg. He needed money. He had sold the Italian suits to a consignment shop for pennies on the dollar. He had sold his golf clubs. Today, he had one option left. The Rolex Submariner. It was the watch he had bought for himself after his first big promotion. He had managed to hide it in his gym bag when Sarah raided the closet. He put on a heavy coat and took the train into the city, keeping his head down. He was terrified of running into someone he knew. He walked into a pawn shop on North Clark Street. The bell above the door jingled. "Help you," the guy behind the counter grunted. He didn't look up from his phone. "I have a Rolex," Tom said, trying to sound authoritative. "Submariner, mint condition, box and papers." The guy looked up. He took the watch, turned it over, and screwed a loop into his eye. He inspected it for a long minute. "I'll give you $2,000, the guy said. $2,000, Tom gasped. "This is a $12,000 watch. It's a classic. It's a luxury item in a recession." The guy shrugged. "And you look like you need the money fast. Take it or leave it." Tom swallowed his pride. "I'll take it." He walked out with $2,000 bills in his pocket. It felt like a fortune, but he knew it would barely cover rent and legal fees for 2 months. As he walked down the street, clutching the cash in his pocket, he saw a familiar white Mercedes stopped at a red light. It was Jessica. Tom's heart stopped. He hadn't spoken to her since the day she kicked him out of her kitchen. She had blocked his number. She had deleted her social media. He started to walk towards the car. He didn't know what he wanted to say. Maybe he just wanted her to acknowledge him, to acknowledge that he ruined his life for her. He got close enough to see into the passenger window. Jessica wasn't driving. She was in the passenger seat laughing. Her head was thrown back, her hand resting on the driver's shoulder. The driver turned his head. It was Mark. Mark, Tom's best friend. The guy Tom had tried to use as an alibi. The guy who had told Tom, "Man, you gotta be careful," while secretly envying Tom's lifestyle. Tom froze in the middle of the sidewalk. People bumped into him, cursing, but he didn't feel them. Mark and Jessica. The light turned green. The Mercedes accelerated, spraying dirty slush onto Tom's cheap trousers. They didn't see him. They were driving toward the wealthy suburbs, toward the nice restaurants, toward the life Tom used to have. Tom stood there, the cold wind biting his face. He realized then that the betrayal hadn't just been Sarah finding out. The universe was rewriting his entire reality. He had cheated on a loyal wife for a woman who was now sleeping with his best friend. He felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his cracked iPhone. It was a notification from LinkedIn. Congratulations to Sarah Jenkins on her new position as Chief Financial Officer at Peterson Global Logistics. Tom stared at the screen. Peterson, the client. The very client Tom had tried to embezzle from. Sarah hadn't just exposed him. She had taken his biggest client. She had impressed old man Peterson so much with her forensic audit, the one that found Tom's theft, that Peterson had hired her. She was the CFO. She was making his salary. She was living in his house. She had his dog. And he was standing in the slush with 2,000 and an ankle monitor. A deep, dark rage began to build in Tom's chest. It wasn't the manic panic of before. It was something heavier, something dangerous. He didn't want a lawyer anymore. He didn't want a plea deal. He wanted revenge. He turned around and walked toward the train station, but he didn't go back to Gary. He took the train north. Toward Oak Street. He knew the codes to the garage. He knew Sarah sometimes forgot to set the alarm on Saturday afternoons when she was gardening. If he couldn't have his life back, he was going to make sure she couldn't enjoy hers. The Chicago winter had turned cruel. By the time Tom reached the outskirts of the Oak Street subdivision, the temperature had plummeted, and the wind whipped through the thin fabric of his thrift store coat like a razor. His toes were numb inside his cheap shoes. But the physical cold was nothing compared to the icy, burning rage that fueled his every step. He stood in the shadows of the massive oak tree that gave the street its name, watching the house. His house. It glowed in the twilight like a beacon of warmth and prosperity. The golden light from the kitchen windows spilled out onto the snow-covered lawn, illuminating the pristine landscaping he had paid for. He could see the silhouette of the new Range Rover in the driveway, a gleaming fortress of steel that Sarah had bought with money that in his twisted mind still belonged to him. To the casual observer, Tom was just a man walking home. But inside his pocket, his hand cramped around the cold, heavy steel of a stolen industrial flashlight. He didn't have a plan. He had an impulse. He wanted to shatter the picture-perfect life Sarah was living. He wanted her to feel the fear that had become his constant companion since the indictment. He checked the ankle monitor hidden beneath his pant leg. The small green light blinked rhythmically, a digital shackle reminding him that he was violating his bail conditions. He was legally forbidden from being within 500 feet of this address. He didn't care. The red mist of desperation had clouded his judgment, convincing him that one conversation, one forceful, terrifying conversation, could fix this. He crossed the street, his boots crunching softly on the fresh snow. He moved with the stealth of a thief, ducking behind the bulk of the Range Rover. He crept toward the side door of the detached garage. This was his ace in the hole. He had installed the security keypad himself 5 years ago. He remembered the feeling of superiority he'd had when he set the master override code, thinking he was the only one who would remember it. He punched the numbers with trembling fingers. 7, 7, 3, 4. Beep, beep, beep. Click. The mechanism groaned, and the lock disengaged. A twisted smirk curled on Tom's lips. She's careless, he thought, his ego surging. She thinks she's a genius, but she didn't even change the garage code. He slipped inside, the smell of oil and cold concrete greeting him. He moved to the interior door that led to the mudroom. He turned the handle. It was unlocked. He stepped into the house. The atmosphere hit him instantly, the scent of fresh lilies, expensive mahogany, and the faint savory aroma of a slow-cooked dinner. It smelled like success. It smelled like a life that had surgically removed him. He walked into the kitchen, his wet boots leaving dark, muddy streaks on the marble floors he had once bragged about to his colleagues. Sarah was standing at the kitchen island, her back to him. She was arranging a massive bouquet of white lilies in a crystal vase, her movements precise and graceful. She was humming a soft tune, sipping from a glass of red wine that sat near her elbow. She looked peaceful. She looked radiant. That peace was an insult. It was a declaration that she was better off without him. "Hello, Sarah." Tom said, his voice raspy, sounding like grinding gravel. He gripped the flashlight, raising it slightly, expecting the reaction he craved. He wanted the scream. He wanted the dropped vase. He wanted to see her crumble. Instead, Sarah didn't flinch. She slowly placed the final lily into the arrangement, adjusting a green leaf with agonizing slowness. Then she turned around. Her face was a mask of perfect, terrifying composure. Her eyes didn't widen in shock. They narrowed with a look of clinical disappointment. "You're late, Tom," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of fear. "I expected you about an hour ago." Tom froze, the adrenaline stuttering in his veins. He took a step back, confused. You expected me?" Sarah took a sip of her wine, savoring the vintage. "I know you pawned the Rolex today," she said casually, as if discussing the weather. "I never removed the insurance policy on it. I got an alert the moment the serial number was run through the pawn shop's database, and then I saw the charge for a Metro train ticket to the suburbs on that old joint credit card you tried to reactivate this afternoon. You really are predictable, Tom. A criminal always returns to the scene of the crime." "Shut up!" Tom shouted, the humiliation igniting his temper. He stepped forward, brandishing the flashlight like a club. He swung it wildly, smashing a ceramic fruit bowl on the counter. Apples and oranges scattered across the floor. "You think you're so smart. You stole everything from me. My job, my money, my reputation. You ruined my life." "I stole nothing," Sarah replied, her voice dropping an octave, becoming hard as diamond. "I repossessed my reality. You stole from your clients. You stole my trust. You did this to yourself, brick by brick, lie by lie. I built this house. Tom screamed, spit flying from his mouth, his eyes bulging. I paid for this granite. I paid for these floors. You are nothing without me. And now you are trespassing, Sarah said, glancing at the wall clock with bored indifference. You have exactly 30 seconds. 30 seconds until what? Tom sneered, stepping closer, looming over her. Until you call the cops, I cut the landline outside, Sarah. I'm not stupid. No one is coming to save you. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just heard the trap snap shut. Oh, Tom, you really haven't been paying attention to the upgrades I've made since you left. She pointed a manicured finger toward the upper corner of the ceiling. A small, angry red light blinked steadily on a sleek black camera lens. That camera is equipped with military-grade facial recognition. She explained, her tone almost educational. It's linked directly to a private security firm. The moment you walked into the garage, the system identified you. It cross-referenced your biometrics with the active restraining order on file. It triggered a silent panic alarm to the Oak Street Police Department before you even opened the mudroom door. Tom's face went pale, the blood draining away to leave him looking like a ghost. He looked at the camera, then back at Sarah, the horror dawning on him. But the garage code, he stammered, his voice trembling. You let me in. You didn't change it. I changed it the day you left, Sarah corrected him. But I changed it back to your code yesterday, because I knew you were desperate. I knew you were broke, and I knew that if I gave you an opening, you would do something stupid enough to violate your bail conditions, so the judge would have no choice but to revoke it. She took a step closer to him, fearless in the face of his violence. You see, Tom, the white-collar fraud case is taking too long. I was tired of waiting for the trial. I wanted you gone now. So I set a mouse trap. And look at the size of the rat I caught. In the distance, the wail of sirens pierced the winter air. They were close, deafeningly close. Panic primal and overwhelming seized Tom. He spun around, sprinting back toward the mudroom door. Click, thud. The sound of a heavy electronic deadbolt engaging echoed through the kitchen. He grabbed the handle. It wouldn't budge. He scrambled toward the front door, slipping on the wet floor, and lunged for the knob. Click, thud. Smart home integration, Sarah said, leaning against the counter, watching him scurry like a trapped animal. I locked every exit from my phone while you were screaming about the granite. You're sealed in, Tom. Tom pounded on the heavy oak door, his fists bruising against the wood. Blue and red lights washed over the living room walls, flashing through the windows, turning his sanctuary into a disco of doom. Tires screeched in the driveway. Car doors slammed. Open the door! Tom screamed, tears streaming down his face, the flashlight clattering to the floor. Sarah, please. They'll put me in jail. I can't go to federal prison. Please. You should have thought about that before you booked that room at the Palmer house, Sarah said softly, finishing her wine. The front door burst open with a crash. 3 officers in tactical gear stormed the hallway, guns drawn. Police, drop the weapon! Get on the ground! Now! Tom collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. His hands raised in surrender. As the officers swarmed him, dragging him roughly into the snow and clamping handcuffs onto his wrists, he managed to look back one last time. Sarah was standing in the doorway, framed by the warmth of the home he had destroyed. She looked at him with zero sympathy. She raised her empty wine glass in a silent, mocking toast. Then she firmly closed the door. 6 months later, the federal courtroom was silent save for the hum of the HVAC system and the scratching of the stenographer's machine. Because Tom had broken into the victim's home with a weapon while out on bail, the plea deal for the embezzlement charges had been incinerated. The prosecution had gone for the maximum penalty, painting Tom as a violent flight risk with no regard for the law. "Mr. Jenkins," Judge Halloway said, peering over his spectacles with disdain, "your behavior demonstrates a complete lack of remorse, a profound arrogance, and a danger to the community. For the counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, and aggravated burglary, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison." The gavel came down with a finality that echoed in Tom's bones. He was led away in a bright orange jumpsuit, shackled at the waist and ankles. He scanned the gallery, desperate for a friendly face. There was no one. Mark was gone. Jessica had moved to Arizona. His sister had changed her number. He was entirely, utterly alone. In the back row, Sarah stood up. She smoothed the skirt of her designer suit. She didn't look at Tom. She didn't need to. He was the past. She walked out of the courthouse and into the bright, blinding sunshine of a Chicago spring. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out to check the notification. It was a text from her real estate agent. Realtor. "Great news, Sarah. We just closed on the downtown condo. The distressed property you wanted. The bank accepted your cash offer this morning." Sarah smiled. It was the condo, the exact unit Tom had tried to buy as a love nest for Jessica. He had lost it, and now Sarah owned it for pennies on the dollar. She typed a quick reply. "Perfect. I think I'll rent it out. Passive income is so important for a single woman. Don't you think?" She climbed into her Range Rover, put on her sunglasses and merged into traffic, driving toward a future that belonged only to her. Tom thought he was the main character in a story about a man who could have it all, the wife, the mistress, and the money. But he forgot the most important rule of life. Arrogance is a debt, and eventually the universe comes to collect. He underestimated his wife, seeing her kindness as weakness. He didn't realize that the person who manages the details of your life is the one person who knows exactly how to dismantle it. In the end, Sarah didn't just get even. She got ahead. She turned her pain into power and her betrayal into a business plan. Tom lost his freedom not because he cheated, but because he thought he was too smart to get caught. So the next time you think you can pull the wool over someone's eyes, remember Tom Jenkins. Remember that while you're playing checkers, the person you're lying to might be playing chess. Wow. I don't think anyone expected that level of planning from Sarah. What do you guys think? Did Tom deserve that 15-year sentence? Or was Sarah's trap a little too cold-blooded? I want to hear your verdict in the comments below. Team Sarah or Team? Well, does anyone actually support Tom? If you enjoyed this story of hard karma and ultimate justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy Wild West drama coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you betray.